Ryan is very interested in DePIN, but I don't really get it. Over the past year, we've seen it do relatively well at some points, and then not so well at other points. I can you To me, it seems like the main issue is, and this is within all of crypto, is there needs to be a token to pay. But the issue is that that token is fluctuates in price, so it can cause some issues in how people are getting paid. Um, do you see that as being a roadblock going forward? Do you think more of them need to start paying in USDC, USDT, etc.? And second of all, where do you see the DePIN market headed? Is it still going to be network based, or are we going to get more and more exotic DePIN products?
I mean, in fact, I think we need to move less exotic into more things that companies want to buy. DePin's had a pretty tough year the past year. I was reflecting back in late 2023 or early 2024, DePin had this, call it 5 to 7x price run. I think that was engineered a lot by investors and liquid funds, but there was no rational reason why all of a sudden these things traded up 5x from where they were. And since then, basically, there's just been a slow decline in price. Generally, that has been in excess of where the market has gone. I think the reason there's kind of a couple things going on with DePIN right now. One is this might be a hot take, but DePIN has been hijacked in terms of investors and, let's say, founders and teams that are looking to create value for themselves, not for the community. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the revenues that are like, they just haven't generated that many revenues. If you look, I was actually looking at DePIN Ninja today. It's a great site built by our friends at EV3. And like, none of these teams have more than $10 million of ARR going to the token. And you're like, so we have these protocols valued at hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars, and we have like less than $10 million in recurring revenue, or any revenue whatsoever if you just annualize it. So I think like the expectations put on DePIN have are in extreme excess of the underlying fundamentals. Secondly, is that the revenue is actually not going to the token. I was talking to a major DePIN leader, and roughly only 30% of revenue actually goes to the token. And I was recently talking to another known DePIN leader, like protocol, and they didn't even know offhand what percent of the revenue went to the token. And so basically, in my view, we actually have a bunch of centralized companies that are using a token for distribution, which is, by the way, a fine business model, but it's not actually DePIN in any meaningful way, because most of the value flow is not actually going to the token. So I think DePIN's kind of lost its way a little bit, if I'm just being perfectly honest. We've also seen every sort of DePIN being developed, but very few of them actually focusing on getting demand in. We can build supply for any sort of network that we want. So I think like that's the context I have. So I'm like, fundamentally, it's one of my most exciting areas to invest, in the fact that I worked at Google Nest before in IoT. I have a background in hardware from nuclear submarine design. There's crypto elements. So it's sort of like the perfect place for me to dive in. But we haven't seen as many exciting teams as I thought we were going to over the course of the past 12 months. I think what we have is a lot of terrific engineers and founders, but we haven't yet figured out how to take these systems and productize them in a way that companies are willing to pay large amounts of money. And so that might be that we're generating data that isn't helpful, or maybe it's purely just a sort of broken sales process that's taken place. So what we really look for now in DePIN projects is not just can they build the system, but can they hire the executive team that can actually sell this data with the required SLAs that's required for larger enterprises to actually sign multi-million-dollar contracts. I'll pause there because that was sort of a lot of context on DePIN. Let me know if you want to dive into anything more specific on
Yeah,
that.
what I'd like to add is to your question of, so I do think in many cases it makes sense to have DePIN networks on crypto rails for payments. I do think we may start to see more USDC payments, to your question, than payments in the native tokens, because the market has basically said, participants have said, mainly because of what Carl was saying, there's not really value accrual to the tokens in most current constructs. And or there just isn't demand when people receive them. You receive your Bitcoin as a miner. People do sell their Bitcoin, but there's like demand for it on the other side. There really isn't that marginal buyer for a DePIN token. No smart, financial person is going to look at many of these protocols and say, I want to buy that from the Hive Map or sorry, I don't want to mention specific ones, or Helium. They're some of the best projects, but there's just historically not been a lot of demand for these tokens. Their trading volume is low because the financial investor doesn't see a reason to purchase that token from the miner. Okay. So you're getting them sold. They have sell pressure. There's not a marginal buyer. There's no volume, and the prices don't go anywhere. There are ways to change that by making the token more valuable. Hey, maybe you have more benefits for staking, but you're going to need fee accrual. We get the question about buyback and burn. I know Carl doesn't love that as a general purpose model. It really all does boil down to the labs entities, the equity holders that sit on top of these protocols need to start treating them not just as protocols that they can build equity-based businesses on top of, but ones where they actually do value the protocol participants with that sort of Web3 ethos. And I think this is what Carl was getting at, where we're going to actually drive value to the token and give people a reason to hold it. Otherwise, we're just going to see no volumes and plummeting prices. And it's not clear that they'll become great venture businesses, even if they're interesting products and valuable networks for the world.